It's time we began. We'll give a couple of seconds to the folks out in the lobby. It's good to see you all this morning. I can't remember a Valentine's Day it's been like this one, and it appears it's going to be even snowier and blusterier than we've already got, but we take what the Lord gives us. I do want to announce that we've had some problem with freezing in the bathrooms in the foyer. So if any one of you need to use the restrooms, please go to the center restrooms, the newer ones in the new section. They're all working fine. But this is when we always find out when we've got super cold weather where we got pipes that are susceptible to freezing, and today's the day. I got a feeling we've only just begun too. Last week I announced to you, you know me, I never stick with the same game plan too long. And I wasn't thinking till someone reminded me, today is Valentine's Day. And you know, really, Potiphar's wife having lust for Potiphar wouldn't be a good subject for Valentine's Day. And you know, that made a lot of sense to me, so I just thought, yeah, let's go with a love story and not a lust story, like with Joseph. Poor old Joseph didn't know what hit him, but he ran. She literally tore the coat off his back, and that's not appropriate for Valentine's Day. We're going to be studying out of the book of Ruth this morning, and to me that's the ultimate love story. Because it's a short book. It's only got 4 chapters, and I've got 4 brethren that's going to come up and read of a chapter in the book of Ruth, and all 4 of them have a short. They're about, and it's a small little book. It's only 4 chapters, and just very condensed. But it's rich with good, wonderful. Male-female relationships, female with female relationships in a good, glorious, loving, kind way. It's, to me, it fits what my mind thinks of not only God's kindness towards all of them, but to us, and sharing that with us, saying, you want to be a good husband, you want to be a good wife, you want to be a good mother-in-law, want to be a good sister-in-law. This is it. Just read these people. And, we always say in the New Testament, what would Jesus do? Well, this is what would loving people of God do with one another in their interpersonal relationships together. And I just think it's, to me, the best. I love to call a lot of things the best. When interpersonal relationships are involved, I immediately think of the book of Ruth. I'm going to give you a brief introduction, and then I'm going to have several of the brethren come up, and they know who they are and what chapter they are, so they will just come up unannounced. You know them anyway. But the short book of Ruth is a bridge between 2 major parts of Israel's covenant history, and that's why it's very important to put everything together in the Old Testament. The first part, Genesis through Judges, focuses on how Abraham's descendants became a nation and on the covenant of God made with Israel. That was the first one. God made the second part, Samuel and Kings, tells the story of the nation's kings and the covenant God made with David as the head of Israel's royal line. You know, till then they didn't have royalty. Till David was really made king. Saul was king, the first one. And to be right honest with you, Saul didn't work out well. He was too full of himself, too full of pride, too full of hate, too full of anger. He spent, a large part of his being a king before God told him, you're done. You're not doing what I'm telling you to do, to actually losing his life and the life of a big part of his children, some of his sons. That's a sad story. David's story, he fares a little better, and so did his descendants. But anyway, the story of the nation's kings, covenant God was made with David. Then Ruth helps the transition by opening in the days of the judges and ending with the genealogy of David. You know, God tried the judges for a while. Some of them were very good. Some of them were very not so good. You know, and most of the women, Deborah and some of the women judges were the best judges. The guys, Samson comes to mind. You know, he was one of our lessons we taught about. He and Delilah, they didn't fare well, either one of them. And so it's not a perfect people that God has had to deal with in all of the history of man's creation. There's been winners, losers, people that were redeemed, and so it is today. You know, we're only as good as our passion and our love for God and His Word. And if we seek to go our own way, think our own thoughts, do our own thing, then we bear the consequences. And they both have consequences. And Ruth is a good example of good consequences. This book appears to have been written to defend David's right to be king. You know, there's some question about that. Why would that be? Why would it even come up about David being a king? What were the big things with the Jews? What was it in Jesus' time? What was it in Paul's time? Bloodline. Oh, my. You talk about that, was it? Genealogy. You can call it any number of things, but who you were was a big point of who you were from that in your genealogy. Some of you do genealogy work. I do with my family, and it's very interesting because you got to take the good, the bad, and the ugly in a family, and they had it. The children of Israel, they had champions like Joseph, my favorite guy, and so I'd like to talk. I was going to talk more about Joseph today, but before I decided to switch to a Valentine subject like Ruth. But you know, you had exemplary people of God, and you had those that weren't so much. And so I appreciate the honesty of God in retelling not only that story, but this story of Ruth and her Redeemer kinsman. Remember that name I told you. There will be a test after this lesson. No, I'm just kidding. But that's a key one. Remember why David and his line was accepted? When he had a Moabite ancestor. And that'll give you the crux of where the question was David really a legitimate king? And that this is put to rest in Ruth. One of the reasons the people of Moab had I call it a 10-generation moratorium put on them. And who did it? Moses, right? And why did he do it? When they were coming through after being parted and they were going into the promised land, heading for the promised land, what did Moses pronounce? Actually, God did. He said, he said not only don't bother them, but help them, assist them through their travels. You know, what did the Moabites do? Yeah, they want to fight or do anything but make them welcome, make them assist them. You know, God's making a statement with everything else He'd done. These are my people. I've protected them with light by night, clouds by day. Wouldn't you think some of these well, my mind's reeling here. Moab. Does everybody know how we got Moabites? Very good. Okay, you got it, Wes. Go ahead, tell me more about it. Oh, okay, Dennis. That's it. Yeah, I'll take Dennis too. Well, Wes was. That's it. Go on, Dennis. Who were Moabites?
Yeah, they were not Israelites, but they were Hebrews because they were descendants of Lot.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
where did the Moabites lose it was Lot's daughters when they committed an immoral act with their father. I think they lost their standing right then. There was a little sting with the fact that God said this isn't right. Their whole nation started with incest. I don't want you to have anything to do with them, and it was a reciprocal, as it was so many of these other tribes around that had some bit of contact with the children of Israel, and maybe even was related to them directly or indirectly. That Moabites were among the not God's chosen people. Who were some of the others mentioned? Jesus used one of them that I love. He really rubbed their nose in it. Remember the Good Samaritan? They were outcasts. They were, a Jew wouldn't go across the street to help a Samaritan. Matter of fact, several of them didn't. They crossed on the other side. But the point I'm making is she came out of something that they weren't welcomed. And they had a 10-generation moratorium on them. And guess who benefited from that? This shows the beauty of God's creation and God's synchronization of people, time, and places. And I just thought that was awesome when I read that. What does this set the stage for when dear sweet Ruth married Boaz? She was a Moabite. She couldn't get away with that. She can't have anything to do with them. Why can she? Because the moratorium is over. David and him being in that he was beyond the 10th generation, so he got a get home free pass card because of his ancestor Ruth. Who was Ruth in relationship to King David and that kingship line? Anybody? What? Ruth was David's what? Great-grandmother. It was Ruth's great-grandmother. So that's pretty about as close as it get. I think highly of my ancestries and my great-grandmother. David had a reason to be proud of his great-grandmother, the Moabite Ruth. And that's what we're going to be looking at today as we're reading some of these scriptures together. If you'd like to get your Bibles out and turn to Ruth. You know where Ruth is? First, Second Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah. You have different page on your different Bible. Now, I'm not sure, Jim, what you're gonna start chapter 1. You'll be reading from what? NIV. Okay, NIV. I'll go ahead and if you would just announce what version of the Bible you're reading out of when you read. I'll let the brethren go ahead and read these, and then I will summarize a little bit of what this all means to us and what this means to, and if you have any question about what a Redeemer kinsman is, I'll try to answer it as best I can. But these Jews and Israelites, they had God's word and they did embrace it. And some of them embraced it to the umpth degree, and 10 generations was it. If she'd have been any other thing than in that lineage up to that point, Ruth wouldn't have been acceptable, nor would David. Because if you invalidate your founders, your first kindred ancestry, you invalidate the whole thing as far as the Jews are concerned. A Samaritan was a Samaritan was a Samaritan. That's why Jesus was so radical when he was embracing those people like him, Tom just preached a lesson on that. There's no him or them or they. It's us. If we embrace Jesus Christ and him crucified and lay hands on eternal life, that's all we need. Okay, Jim, it's all yours. Didn't even let you sit down, did I?
I got it.
All right.
Ruth chapter 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name Naomi, and the names of the 2 sons was Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephraimites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah, and the other was Ruth. After they lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons, and her husband. When she heard in Moab that the land had come to the aid, the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you, as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud, and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grow up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me." At this time, they wept again. And then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," Naomi said, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. Go back with her." But God replied, here's the statement of beautiful love and commitment and dedication. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or return back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging. So the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred up because of them, and the woman explained, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara," which means bitter, because the Almighty God has made my life bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought me misfortune upon me. So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning.
I'm going to be reading Ruth 2 out of the New American Standard Version. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain, following one in whose eyes I may find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she left and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, "May the Lord be with you." And they said to him, "May the Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant in charge of the reapers replied, "She is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab." And she said, "Please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves." So she came and has remained from the morning until now. She has been sitting in the house for a little while. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but join my young women here. Keep your eyes on the field which they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have ordered the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from what the servants draw." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to me, "Why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" Boaz replied to her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and came to a people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work, and may your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Then she said, "I have found favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and indeed have spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not like one of your female servants." And at mealtime Boaz said to her, "Come here, that you may eat of the bread, and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar." So she sat beside the reapers, and he served her roasted grain, and she ate and was satisfied, and had some left. When she got up to glean, Boaz commanded his servants, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not insult her. Also, you are to purposely slip out for her some grain from the bundles, and leave it so that she may glean, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she picked it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took some out and gave Naomi what she had left after she was satisfied. Her mother-in-law then said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness from the living and from the dead." Again Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is one of our redeemers." Then Ruth the Moabitess said, "Furthermore, he said to me, 'You are to stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law Ruth, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, so that others do not assault you in another field." So she stayed close by the young women of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law.
I will be reading from the New King James. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I seek security for you, that it may be well with you? Now Boaz, whose young women you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is winnowing barley tonight in the threshing floor. Therefore wash yourself and anoint yourself, and put on your best garment, and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Then it shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do." So she said to her, "All that you say to me, I will do." So she went down to the threshing floor, and did according to all that her mother-in-law instructed her. After Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was cheerful, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. And she came softly and uncovered his feet, and lay down. Now it happened at midnight that the man was startled, and turned himself, and there was a woman lying at his feet. And he said, Who are you? So she said, I am Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative. Then he said, Blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, in that you did not go after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request. For all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman. Now it is true that I am close relative. However, there is a relative closer than I. Stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good, let him do it. But if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty for you. As the Lord lives, lie down until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning. She arose before one could recognize another. Then he said, Do not let it be known that this woman came to the threshing floor. Also he said, Bring me the shawl that is on you, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 ephahs of barley and laid it on her. Then she went into the city. When she came to her mother-in-law, she said, Is that you, my daughter? Then she told her all that the man had done for her. And she said, These 6 ephahs of barley he gave me, for he said to me, Don't go empty-handed to your mother-in-law. Then she said, Sit still, my daughter, until you know the matter which will turn out, for the man will not rest until he has concluded this matter today.
New American Standard. Now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the close relative of whom Boaz spoke with passing by. So he said, Turn aside, friend, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit down here. So they sat. And then he said to the closest relative, Naomi, who has come back from the land of Moab, has to sell the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. So I thought to inform him, saying, Buy it before those who are sitting here and before the elders of the people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if not, tell me that I may know. For there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am after you. And he said, I will redeem it. And then Boaz said, On the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must acquire Ruth and the Moabitess, and the widow of the deceased, in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance. The closest relative said, I cannot redeem it for myself, because I would jeopardize my own inheritance. Redeem it for yourself. You may have my right of redemption, for I cannot redeem it. Now there was the custom in the former times in Israel concerning the redemption and exchange of the land to confirm any matter. A man removed his sandal and gave it to another, and this was the manner of in Israel. But so the closest relative said to Boaz, Buy it yourself. And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are witnesses today that I have bought from the hand of Naomi, and that belong to Elimelech, and all the belongs to Clifton and Molan. Moreover, I have acquired Ruth to the Moabites, and the widow of the Molan, and to the wife, in order to raise up the name of the deceased on the inheritance. So the name of the deceased will not be cut off from his brothers, or from the court in his place. You are witnesses today." All the people who were in the court and the elders said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel. And may you achieve wealth in Ephraim and become famous in Bethlehem. Moreover, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore in Judah, through the offspring which the Lord will give you by this woman." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went in to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed is the Lord who has not left you without a redeemer today, and may his name become famous in Israel. May he also be to you a restorer of life and a sustainer of your old age. For your daughters-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap, and became his nurse. The neighbor women gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." So they named him Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. And now these are the generations of Perez. To Perez was born Hezron, and to Hezron was born Ram, and to Ram Benadad, and Benadad was born Nahshon, and Nahshon Solomon, and Solomon was born Boaz, and to Boaz Obed, and to Obed was born Jesse, and to Jesse David.
Wasn't that a great story? Every time I read that, I love that. Did they do things according to God's will and God's way? Every one of them. You know, even the blessing that the people around them, their fellow Israelites, their tribe of Judah folks, there was people blessing people, you know, and that's the way it is. When you're looking at blessing the lives of one another, just like Ruth was doing, she was doing that when she was a Moabitess. You know, that wasn't something that was just all of a sudden she changed her ways. She was a good, lovely, kind woman, and that was letting her love of God and her respect for God show beyond her nationality. The fact that the one sister went back, she went back to her Moabite brethren with the blessing of her kindred. And I've just got a few minutes left, so I wanted to leave a little bit of time for any questions you might have for any of what was read. I do thank you, brother, and you did all did a great job, and I appreciate it. But any questions come of that? That's ancestry at its best. I've got a bunch of cousins spread all over the country that we continually text each other as much as I do my brother and sister on ancestry things. It's what we love to do. We like to talk about these things. So if you like ancestry and how it crosses and crosses again and reinforces, and you like the mix of good and honorable and godly people, this is your book. You gotta love Ruth. Okay, any questions? Yes, Dennis.
I was just noticing while Gentry was reading this, that the relative last talked about God didn't leave her without a close relative, and it has a number beside of it. And I looked over in the middle, and that word means redeemer.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't show that on the other places.
Yes. Well, some versions said redeemer, kinsman. You know, and that was the thing where she lost her husband and her sons. It was always the male that inherited the rights, and then the female, the mothers, they were really and this even is in England, way back into the 15th, 16th century. The woman only rights she had was whatever the male inherited, and that was the closest relative. Any of you ever seen what's the English deal? I'm trying to think of it now. It was a big, help me out, Judy. We watched it. It was a series. Somebody watched it. Please, somebody tell me you watched it. I'm drawing a blank. Downton Abbey. Some of you maybe have seen Downton Abbey, but that was and also Jane Austen. That was a big thing. Where this, in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, this man was a landowner, substantial landowner, but he was a nephew because he had all girls. This nephew was kind of a dolt anyway, and he was going to inherit the whole thing. And it was just so vexing for them and everything. Well, that got sorted out too. The girls did okay. If you haven't saw Pride and Prejudice or any of those. But I'm telling you all this to say things went well for Ruth. And the reason it went well for Ruth was she had faith in God beyond her circumstances, beyond the life she lived in Moab. And she chose the better part, as Jesus was telling Mary and Martha. Ruth chose the better part. And Naomi, a lot of weddings, they use that, whither thou goest, I will go, whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. That wasn't Boaz and Ruth. That was Naomi, Ruth talking to Naomi saying, I love you so much. You were my mother-in-law. You are my mother-in-law. The death of your son doesn't change a thing for me. We are one, and we are family. And boy, if you can learn from that, I've got kinfolk that I feel that way about too. I would do anything for them, and I hope you do too, because if you do, you're a Ruth and you're a Naomi. You love beyond your own needs. Tom?
The Redeemer is an important Old Testament concept.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you read the story of Tamar
Yes.
and Judah. I love that story, but here we see Judah, one of the 12 tribes, son,
Yeah.
who failed to provide a Redeemer to Tamar. He was required by law.
Yeah, and he didn't do right.
He kept blowing her off. He kept ignoring her. And so she went to extreme measures to continue that bloodline or seed line. And I'll let you read, but
Yeah.
but it's just
Well,
interesting that was so important to her because they understood
they did.
continue the bloodline. But Judah was neglectful in his duty.
He was.
He didn't obey God's law.
Yeah.
Boaz, a man of honor, he did.
Yes, and that's good. That you always have a counterpoint when people didn't do right in the circumstances, and she, Tamar, is another story. But she literally shamed Judah into doing right by her. She was very shrewd, and good for Tamar. But having said that, this is what I'd like to close with, folks. When you do it right, when you do it with the right heart, and everybody does it with the right heart. I don't care if you're a congregation where you're shepherds, you're preachers, your members. When you do right by one another, when your heart's right for one another, when you love one another beyond your own needs and your own desires, then God will bless you, and he will bless you every time. The results of that is joy, peace, happiness, all the fruits of the Spirit, which the greatest of those fruits are what? Love. And this is a good time to have a love class on St. Valentine's Day. Okay, I appreciate you attending. You're all good listeners. A little quiet, as Stroudsville is typical to do. Not a lot of questions. One more chance. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'll leave the lesson with you. Next week, we will be starting a study of Deuteronomy. So I'll just make a blanket assignment. Just start reading Deuteronomy and come prepared to talk about it. It's not a big Bible.
Out